7 years after Pierce Brosnan and GoldenEye breathed new life into the James Bond series, the Irishman returned for his fourth and final outing as 007 in Die Another Day. Released to mixed reviews, the film is perhaps best remembered for the introduction of bikini-clad NSA agent Jinx Johnson, played by Halle Berry, but less favourable attention was given to the Aston Martin V12 Vanquish that is presented to Bond by John Cleese's Q. With a heavy helping of Y2K-era CGI, the Vanish is equipped with active camouflage technology that makes it functionally invisible. So when things really get going, there is absolutely nothing to see. And with that in mind, let's talk about Arbroath 0, Wraith Rovers 0. This is the Oh No 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 podcast. I am Duncan Cameron, and joining me with an abundance of things to talk about this Sunday afternoon, it's Leslie Mayburn, first of all. How are you, Les?
Well, that was definitely another dire day, we could say that. A pretty frosty reception when we got up there. I'm actually kind of glad we're recording this at midday because I'm glad you mentioned the Vanquish. I had a whiskey too many last night and I went on Facebook and somebody just down the road in Arbroath is selling a Subaru SVX, which is a very exotic Subaru from the mid-90s, which does all the things the Vanquish from Die Another Day does, apart from disappear. So I'm very glad we're recording this in the middle of the day because it stopped me going and buying a Subaru on impulse. So that, if the one good thing comes out the weekend, it's that.
Excellent. I think, to be fair, you've got plenty of time. I can't see us taking too long today. We've also got Blair Hopcroft as well. How are you, Blair?
I'm all right, mate. I'm really, really hoping we're just going to talk about James Bond films for the next 45 minutes or so, because, I've not got a James Bond pun at hand, but that was turgid. It was so bad. There
was nobody with the attacking instinct of Madonna's fencing instructor from that film. I've not seen it in a while. My brief glance over the Wikipedia synopsis not really helped me too much. Verity, I think she was called. Anyway, we might struggle for good solid content here. I think when the Wraith TV guys can only squeeze 6 minutes out of a game, you know it hasn't been a classic. And to be fair, watching the highlights back, I was like, this game is worse than I remember. There's even fewer things that have happened. So we'll see where this takes us. Blair, I'll give you a big open question to start us off. What, if anything, what did we learn yesterday?
Oh God, that is a really big question. What did we learn yesterday? We learned that we do not score goals. We just don't. We just don't do it anymore. We've had enough fun. I feel like obviously I wasn't on midweek. To be honest, I've not even had a chance to listen. That's how busy my week's been. But post that Scotland game, I feel like all good things have been used up. Like there is no good things left anymore. And yesterday was penance for all the good things that we got midweek. It was just one of those performances. Like, I mean, right from the off, we were fine. We were absolutely fine. We were okay. We actually, I was a wee bit. I listened to you, Pierre, on the post match last week. Really enjoyed it actually, and I really enjoyed the kind of, because I wasn't at the game, so I enjoyed the kind of smither of optimism that came through about. There was at least a vague attempt to try something different. And I was talking to the boys on the bus on the way up. We were chatting about, the managerial appointment and all that kind of stuff. And like the Paul Hanlon of it all. Does Paul Hanlon get a run or not? And one of the viewpoints was that last week nails that down completely. It's not going to happen. And I was like, I'm not so sure. I mean, it was 4 days in. It's early doors. I said, but if he goes out today and plays basically the same lineup and the same formation and does everything the same, then he's pretty much nailed to the wall, not going to get it, because the whole point of this is we need to see some change. And at least we got that yesterday. I, for the love of me, could not figure out what the shape was.
Glad you said that.
4-4-2, 3 at the back. It seemed, if Barry Robson was fluid, that was liquid. It was like, I couldn't figure it out for love nor money. The whole game, actually, right to the end, I couldn't figure out what we were playing. But it was different. And there was a an attempt at least to try and play the ball a bit. And in their defence, it wasn't a pitch for playing football on. It wasn't, do you know what I mean? It was heavy and cutting up pretty quick. So, you could be forgiven for kind of allowing the sort of longer balls and the balls up to the strikers and whatever. But it weirdly, it felt like a step forward, but not really any closer to where we need to be. But it was, I don't even can. This analogy's lost all legs.
No, I agree with you, though. Like, it felt like, from a managerial standpoint, I really don't... there's not really anything I can find to criticise.
No.
I don't have bucketfuls of stuff that I'm chucking praise around for. But,
Totally.
like, that's a nice change, actually, from the last couple of months. Like,
I enjoyed the interview.
Yeah, it was fine. Like, there was nothing wrong. There was none of these things that 5 minutes in you're going, why are we doing this? Why is that happening? And I think to an extent the reality of the kind of limitations we've got are on display as well. And that really, to answer my own question about what did we learn, I think to an extent it's like there's only so much you can do, really.
Yeah.
And to an extent, some of that is around about, as you say, the conditions and all that kind of stuff as well. There's no getting away from the fact that Arbroath are a good team as well. But
especially at home.
Absolutely. But there's not a big list of things where you're going, oh, if only we'd done this, or what if we'd done that? Would that have changed it? Actually, like, I'm not sure there's an awful lot else that was there. Les, for you, was there much? What's the question? Can you think of anything that would have made that a better afternoon for the Rovers that could have been done from the outset?
I mean, in isolation, that's a really respectable result. And if you'd done a straw poll of Rovers supporters at 3:00, I think 90% of people would have taken a draw and a clean sheet. And again, without wanting to get into the managerial cliche of never an easy place to go, I think that's probably true for most teams in the division. Most supporters would happily take a draw away at Arbroath. I mean, Arbroath are having a good season. They're playing well. They've only lost once at home this season. In isolation, that's a really decent point in isolation. It doesn't add up when you factor in the lack of scoring goals. It paints a very bleak picture. But like Blair was saying, I was watching the game and we were trying to move it about a bit more. We weren't shelling it up to Jack Hanlon. And if there's a place where you might think you'd get away with mortaring the ball up to a big lighthouse striker, it is Gayfield. But we were trying to play it about. We were trying to move it about. So in isolation, there's not a lot you can really complain about. The problem is that all of that is completely nullified, as I'm sure we'll talk about, by how little threat we offer in and around the box. So in isolation, not a bad day's work, and I think most supporters in isolation would agree with that. But I think it does show up the limitation that we have with the attacking options that are at our disposal right now.
Yeah, I almost want to sort of draw a line. I was going to say I almost want to draw a line across the middle of the park. There's already one there. But if you think about it from a sort of defensive standpoint, like a good afternoon. Both in the sense, you've quite literally, you've got the clean sheet, it's what you want. But also, like, made Arbroath look pretty ordinary. They really didn't manage to create too much beyond sort of the first 15 minutes, and even that was pretty scrappy, which, as we said, that's not a given by any means at all. They've looked very good going forward in large spells of this season. But the other end of the park is just, it was kind of more of the same. And I mean, to an extent, things were tried. There was an attempt made certainly to change it. So Sean Byrne dropped out the starting lineup with an injury, and Callum Smith came in. Partly, I think the squad's not very big. You don't have too many options. But I think your straightest swap would have been for Kai Montague to come in. So it is an attacking change. You've got a midfielder going out and a forward coming in with Callum Smith. as you say, Blair, kind of difficult to put your finger on exactly what the shape was. I would have sworn up and down it was a 4-4-2 nominally. Certainly, I know that Davy Hancock was talking about it as kind of a 3-4-3, and I said I'm not going to disagree with him. I think I would say if it was a 3-4-3, I don't think Lewis Stevenson was getting forward anywhere near enough. Whereas if it was a back four, he was fine. It was where he's supposed to be.
But if it was a midfield four, Josh Mullen wasn't getting forward enough. And if it's a back three, he was kind of all right.
It was a kind of... If it was
it's weird.
3-4-3, it was like totally lopsided. Like,
yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. Because I say ultimately, it didn't really yield too much in the way of... Because the biggest change there, of course, is Callum Smith is on the park as a second forward. And crucially, unlike the last time we saw him at Hampden Park, whatever it's called, Daft Hampden, when he came on the left-hand side, he was very firmly central. He was a second forward with Jack Hamilton. And that's the right idea, as far as I'm concerned. That's a thing I think multiple people have been asking for. But it still just never quite came together into a sort of coherent... It seemed like more often than not, by virtue of where the ball was, Callum Smith was more in support of Josh Mullen than he was in support of Jack Hamilton. He was drifting onto that right-hand side to try and work something through. And it just never really kind of materialised into much at all. And again, Blair, is that just the reality of where we are? That there's not... Ultimately, that was the thing to do, and it was what it was?
Yeah, honestly, I think it is. It's hard because I think the only attacking options that Hanlon has at his disposal, like you say, are a Callum Smith coming back from injury. I mean, Kai Montague's probably a more attacking option as well, in terms of a midfielder as far as our midfield goes. But I feel like we've got a lot of players, McMullen included, who kind of need the ball on the deck and need to be able to run with it, and that kind of, close control, nice passing, that kind of idea. We've got lots of forward players without many strikers, effectively. And yesterday just wasn't a day for them. It really wasn't. Mullen really struggled at times to get the ball out from his feet. There's a couple of times he sets himself to cross and then has to set again and has to set again. I think a lot of that is to do with the kind of heavy pitch. The fullbacks, to be fair, their fullbacks were pretty good. I thought they were on. They'd clearly recognised that Mullen's crossing was probably our main avenue of threat, coming from that side. And they did a bit of a number on him, I thought. Not massively through any fault of his or anything else. It was just one of the games where it kind of got nullified a wee bit more than it had in the last, certainly at Queen's Park anyway. What does, like... We were laughing. I was right down in the bottom corner, and there's a guy kind of behind. We're kind of along, in line with the 6-yard box, if you like, at the corner flag on the side of the pitch. And there's a guy maybe in line with the 18-yard box behind the goals, kind of facing forwards, who on a couple of occasions shouted, "Change it," to a chorus of, to what? What does he do? Like, answers on a postcard. Genuinely, if you've got a great idea, write it on a post-it note and send it up and see if we can get something, because I'm not seeing anything. There was nothing on the bench, really, that was going to change it.
Favourite response to that was somebody who shouted, "Get Bryce on," which is just
Get
like
Bryce on.
playing the hits.
Old school. Like it.
Because it's exactly that. I mean, to the point about the kind of defend, or the Arbroath defence, I thought the other one was Brooklyn Cabangolo, who was very much kind of man-marking Jack Hamilton. And, I mean, it looked like Jack Hamilton was giving away about half a foot in height to him, and he just did a very good job again as well. And that's a tough shift. We've said a lot about Jack Hamilton recently. And I don't think he played badly by any means at all. I think he did sort of the best that he could. But again, you need support there for him, and I say the Callum Smith being there is an attempt to do that, but it just never really kind of came together. And again, it just feels like we're sort of searching for a way to help Jack Hamilton be effective, and it's just not. It's not working. We've not found it effectively.
I think yesterday, though, for the first time, it didn't feel like square pegs and round holes. It just felt like square pegs and square holes that aren't very good.
Yeah.
And that's brutal, but it did. It genuinely just felt like everybody was asked to do the job that they can do, and it still isn't. It's not producing any fruit. Like there was nothing.
But in terms of the actual kind of game itself, there's really very, very, very few. I have. So normally when I do my notes for this, I kind of scribble out some bits and pieces, kind of talking points. And then in terms of the actual game itself, I just bullet point, and I go through the highlights and I bullet point them here. I have 6 bullet points here, and one of them, as I look at it, just says halftime. Nothing else in it, just says halftime. The opening period, I kind of touched on it already. There's sort of scrappy, sort of Arbroath chances. I mean, Les, was that just a case of, was that just the game settling? Or was that, I mean, would you read anything into that opening kind of spell?
To be honest, it's what I expected. As I say, Arbroath are good. They're having a good season. And I expected they put 3 goals past St Johnstone recently, so I'd expected they were going to come out and they were going to cause us trouble. So there was nothing unexpected about them starting well at home and getting a couple of shots away, albeit forced a save I think out of Ray at one point, and there's one that kind of was cleared away blocked by Hanlon. There was a bit of a stramash, and then Hanlon eventually got it cleared. That was to be expected. I mean, and also in fairness, the game where we played them at Starks Park, okay, we won 3-0, but it was very even until we got the first goal, and they hit the bar with a very, very good shot. So it's but I was not surprised by that. It's not like you're saying, "Oh, these guys are absolutely dog shit," and we're sitting in. They're a good team. They're playing at home. They're going to have chances. And I actually thought we did settle down a bit, and it was probably a good 15 minutes or so in. But then we did start to settle down and get into it. Paul Neathel taking a yellow early. I mean, we will circle back to this, but I thought he wasn't perfect. I thought he had a very good game. I think, especially given that he was playing for 80 minutes against a good team on a yellow, that's a very mature, balanced performance for a very young guy. And that's another one of the bright spots from yesterday. Was again just, I've gone off on a tangent here and always asked about the first 15 minutes. So I've started talking about Paul Neathel. I've started, so I'll carry on. That one of the issues you get with young players often is it's making that transition from being somebody that you say, right, this guy's not looked out of place, he's not done anything terribly wrong. And we've had a lot of guys down the years like that. Then actually looking at a guy and saying, there's maybe something there. And we're almost, I think, at that point with Neathel, where you're looking at him and you're thinking, there is actually possibly a player there. And you're somebody where you're thinking he's actually a bona fide starting option. I'd like to hope we can get to that stage with Montague, but then different type of player, that's a different discussion. But no, as I say, tough start, but we settled down, Neathel got stuck in, and we started to come into it a bit.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on Paul Neathel. I think he is on an individual player basis, I think he's probably been the biggest kind of beneficiary in terms of the managerial change, because under Robson, he didn't look bad, he just looked anonymous. Like, he wasn't in a game. He only played twice, I think. But in both of those games, the game totally passed him by. And it was like anytime the ball came near him, he just booted it away. But it flew over his head. But that seemed to be, that was the midfield under Robson. Whereas even last week, I think last week it was more in intention than actual execution. But you could see early on, we spoke about this last week, Les, he was trying to put his foot on the ball and actually picking out a couple of passes. And the first time he did it, it's like, wow, genuinely didn't know if he could do that or not. Because there had been he hadn't had the chance to do it. And yesterday I thought it was much more in evidence. And actually, I thought he was probably the best player in the park over the pace. Mm-hmm. And again, as you say, wasn't perfect, didn't run the game by any means at all. But he got that early booking, didn't let it faze him, still got stuck in, still did what he had to do. And there was a little bit of drive to go alongside those passes, which you need in that. Because he's ultimately, and that's the first time in a long time that we've effectively played a midfield 2 rather than a 3. So you're asking a little bit more. You need a little bit more. You can't just be really good at one thing. You have to kind of be relatively good at all of it. And I thought he was. I thought Scott Brown actually, as well, a little bit better. Just looked a bit more comfortable.
Yep.
Not
more of a defined role, I think.
Yeah, definitely. More his role.
Mm.
He's not being asked to do somebody else's job to the best of his abilities. He's been asked to just go and play his own game. I think he's quite comfortable in a 2. And the 2 of them, I think that was a large part of Arbroath struggling to really get much of a grip on the game, was that actually, even though nominally our midfield had a man taken out of it, they were better. They actually had played better and had a little bit more presence, I suppose, in the middle of the park, as opposed to, thinking to last week, when Airdrie were just running through us. Again, the weather, conditions, the pitch, all that kind of stuff. But that basically just didn't happen yesterday. So that was a big improvement. Probably the main talking point from the first half was Jack Hamilton. The ball drops to him in the box. Now, again, I think this is a talking point because of everything else that's gone before. But it's still, well, listen, we don't have many other things to talk about, so we'll have to spend some time on it. Blair, so it's a cross from Dylan Easton that is kind of flashed across the 6-yard box, maybe, and almost kind of rebounds to Jack Hamilton, who takes a first touch, tries to then kind of bring it down, I think sort of with his thigh or his knee, and can't quite get the shot away because the defender's on the scene. I think it's Kamangolo again, actually. Is this, having had a chance to watch it back, is it too harsh to say that this is a big chance? Does he actually do about as well as he can do, given the way the ball springs to him? Or is this one that your big number 9 needs to be, at least getting a shot off?
Not for me in terms of letting him off scot-free on that one, I'm afraid. I thought the ball in was actually pretty good. It did come at him quite quick. There was parallels for me. I must admit, when I watched it live in the ground, there was a few folk groaning, and I was like, "Come on!" The ball kicked up, and it wasn't coming down. And I've never played football I played past P6 to be fair, but I've never played football to any decent level. But you get those ones where the ball's kind of up, and you're like, it just won't drop far enough for me to actually put my laces through it. And live, I genuinely felt it was one of those. But having watched the replay a couple of times this morning, it falls for me back into that category of his first touch. It's just his first touch isn't very good. But the other thing that really draws parallels with him in my own head was the Barney Stewart goal against us at East End Park. And I think it's a confidence thing, and it's so there was a lot of praise for Barney Stewart when he scored that goal, and quite rightly. And in my head, I was like, well, let's work it backwards. Yes, great finish. Really poor first touch. But actually, he deserves credit for being able to improvise. Like, the ball kicks up, and he finds a way to improvise and to make that chance happen. It's the same against Morton. The goal that they score against us, the guys run basically ahead of the ball, but improvises enough to be able to do that. And it just feels like Jack Hamilton's so low on confidence. Maybe he's not. Maybe this is just on the outside looking in, but it certainly doesn't look a confident player.
Yeah.
And the ball kicks up, and it's like he's waiting for it to come down, and he's taking his touch, and he's waiting for it to come down. And I kind of feel like, like a really confident kind of player with a bit of swagger about him on a run of hot form, maybe doesn't take that first touch. And if he does, finds a way to at least get a kind of a shot off a wee bit earlier than what he does, just waits too long for me. And unfortunately, it's the kind of same story over and over again. Well, actually, it's not the same story. He got himself in that position, which is an improvement, in fairness, because he's not been there, certainly not regularly, over the last few weeks. But for me, pretty poor first touch, and makes it too hard for himself. and kind of costs himself that chance.
Les, do you agree with that? Give me your thoughts on this.
Likewise, I mean, so as I said with the Niso chance against Airdrie last week, the first thing I always do now is when something like that comes out, maybe it's just age getting to me and calming down a bit, but I always think, right, I'm going to wait until I see the highlights and see it from different angles, and then it might be, I think, actually on balance, it bubbled up or whatever, or, it was further away than it looked or something like that, and, but it's a recurring pattern. So I've looked at this, and there's 6 times this season we've had a shot at or just close to the 6-yard line where we've not scored. And you're not going to score all these chances, right enough. But we've only of those chances, only 2 have then gone on target. None have resulted in goals. And from the games that's happened in, they're all chances for us to either take the lead or go level. So Hamilton against Partick, Vaughan against St Johnstone, Niso against Airdrie, Hamilton against Queen's Park, Hamilton yesterday, and Gentles against Ross County. So you're not going to score all those. But goals change games. And a great example of that was the first game against Arbroath. Very, very even. We scored just before the break and we never looked back. Airdrie game last week being the reverse of that. We had a chance to go 1-0 up. We didn't. They went down, scored the other end, scored. We fannied about in the box, didn't score. They sprinted down the other end and got a second. So goals do change games. And for whatever reason, we've got to get better at putting chances like that away. You're not going to get all of them. You're not going to win all those games. I'm not saying we would have gone on and won all those games, but across those 6 games, that's 1 point from 18 in games where we have had a chance to get a goal that's put us right back in contention. So, yeah, it's a bleak and frustrating picture. And like I say, I don't know what you do about that to get someone's confidence back into them. So I took a freeze frame of that Hamilton shot yesterday. I know freeze frames can be deceptive, but I was going to share it with the guys and didn't. But I thought, right, if you put Andrew Todd there, Josh Fowler, even Ewan Henderson, what are the chances that they convert that? Probably a lot higher than where we are. And I mean, it also speaks as well with the issue that we've got with injuries. We've said it repeatedly. Hamilton needs maybe a rest, maybe something changed up. We don't have Lewis Vaughan, and it looks like we're not going to have him for the foreseeable. Callum Smith's not that type of play. He's just come back for the foreseeable. Josh Gentles is a kid. Yeah, what do you do? How do you do things differently from there? But yeah, if you start to convert some of those, the picture can change.
Yeah, it's really difficult. It really is. Like, Blair, I think you're right. First of all, the first touch it just needs to be better. Like Jack Hamilton said himself, it's not as it's basically not as difficult as I thought it was. It doesn't come to him at a terrible height. The fact he has to take a second touch on sort of his thigh is because he's popped it up. And again, I think you're right that an on-form striker, an on-form Jack Hamilton, let alone having to bring in, other names, either just stabs it that first time.
I was going to say first time.
Yeah.
Manages to, as you say, sort of improvise after the first touch. And this is the problem. Because even if he stabs it that first time, will he get, a really clean contact on that? Probably not. But a little bit like we spoke last week when he was kind of sent running through and he didn't get a shot away. A better chance of something happening. And I say that's glib. It's easy to just say, just snatch at all your chances, and eventually something will happen. But it comes back to it, which is, Les, you said it a minute ago about that opening first 15 minutes. Arbroath got some shots away. We didn't get any shots away. Really, at any point. There's a couple from Easton over the course of the 90 minutes. One where sort of Arbroath coughed the ball up and he has a shot first time, which I think is fine. It's the right idea. It drifts wide. Another one where he cuts in, shoots for the kind of near post and just gets too much on it and kind of drags it wide of the post as well. Other than that, it's just not getting shots away. And so this is right at the end of the game, to be fair. Taylor Stephen had come off the bench for Arbroath, and he sort of cut in off the right-hand side and had a shot. And it wasn't amazing. It wasn't a brilliant shot. It was fine, but it was on target. And Josh Ray had to get down and push it wide for a corner. And then from that corner, they had a little bit of kind of pressure and then ended up getting a second chance after that. It's like, that's the bit that we just don't seem to be kind of doing. And again, I realise how easy it is to say, oh, just shoot from 20 yards. But we're not getting any shots away at all. Like, as I say, last week, we played Airdrie with a goalkeeper who we knew was in, the lowest his confidence could have possibly been going into that game, notwithstanding however much they managed to kind of buck him up over the week. And basically didn't test him. Didn't get any shots away at him. Aidan McAdams yesterday, I don't think made any saves. I don't think he actually had to save the ball at any point. And that just seems that's the recurring theme. The one of my other very few bullet points. In the second half, Paul Niso kind of driving forwards and he slips Jack Hamilton in. Now, this one I think is more to a credit for the defender because it's a real kind of all or nothing. Hamilton is going to have to just slash it with his left foot. And I think even if he does, the defender probably still gets to the ball. But again, it's just the same thing. It's the chances that we are getting aren't resulting in shots on goal, let alone aren't resulting in goals themselves. And as you said, that's just like Callum Smith, with the greatest of respect to him, he's not the guy that we need right now in the sense of the type of player that he is. Like, Callum Smith is a great guy to have if you've already got a goal scorer. Because you're like, there's a guy who's going to work his socks off and not going to give defenders peace and all that kind of extra stuff. He's a great, like, second choice guy to have. But he's just never going to be your first choice for a striker. Nobody's looking at championship level and going, right, we're going to start with Callum Smith and work our way back. He's the guy that you want coming in support because he'll do that really, really well. And it's just, we don't have the foundation for that at the moment.
Thoroughly depressing, isn't it?
It is. Really, genuinely though, like, it is. Because, as we said at the start, it's easier if you can go like, you're not playing this guy or you're not playing that guy.
Or you're not working hard or you're not trying. Or...
Yeah. Like, it seems like that was about as good as that could have went yesterday, but it's kind of the way it feels. Speaking of other guys who were there, so Paul McMullen comes on second half and I thought did quite well in the sense of it. He was sort of, again, willing to run with the ball, willing to kind of drive at that defence, which, we know he can do. Talking about Paul Niso as a big kind of beneficiary of the change in the managers. I know Paul McMullen hasn't had a start yet, but you'd feel like things can't surely get any worse for him. He surely is the biggest the question mark or the biggest puzzle from the summer business, that Barry Robson brought Paul McMullen in and then just didn't seem to have any inclination of doing any of the stuff that he's good at or that he would want to do. And we also got Josh Gentles came on for the kind of last little spell as well. Blair, what did you make of the performances from those two in particular?
I thought McMullen was good. Like you say, ran with the ball. And to be fair to him, on a day and on a pitch where it didn't really suit him at all, actually. I thought he made the best of it. Kind of like what Josh Mullen did at times yesterday as well. And Dylan Easton to an extent, there was a clear desire to do something, even though it probably wasn't the easiest thing to do. It was trying to kind of change up the way that we've been kind of handling things. I genuinely thought he was pretty good. He opened them up a few times. His work rate is incredible. He helped out defensively. He was back challenging for headers and helping with clearances and stuff. And he really provides you with a bit of threat at times. But he's not a goal scorer again, and it's like we've got a team for bridesmaids. Like it just feels like, do you know what I mean? There's no kind of, I don't know. There's no cutting edge, and for me, like I know it's early, and I know he's not played an awful lot of football, but I'm seeing nothing absolutely diddly squat for Josh Gentles that makes me go, there's an option right there. Seems to disappear at times. Talking to your Aston Martin Vanquish, he can play a 1-2, and between playing the pass and getting it back has disappeared behind 3 defenders. I don't understand it. But maybe that's harsh. I think it's funny because, like, yesterday's one of the games as well. Like Arbroath, they'll probably hate when folk keep bringing it up all the time, but Gayfield's not a nice place to go. It's not a fantastic surface to play football on. When the wind's up, it's brutal. And yesterday felt like the perfect day to go to Gayfield.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? There was not a lick of wind coming over the Tay Bridge coming up. Like you couldn't see Dundee from the other side of the Tay. The fog was that thick. And yeah, there was no fog by the time we got up to Arbroath, but it was still really, really still. There was not a lick of wind. So it was kind of a leveler almost, like in the sense that we couldn't play beautiful passing football, but neither could they, because like you said before, they're not just a team of haddies. They're all right. But they couldn't play football either. So it was a game where kind of everything was even. There was no 20 minutes with the wind behind you, get a goal up and see it out kind of thing. It was genuinely a level playing field. And I honestly think if the footballing authorities had been there yesterday, that could have actually stopped football, that game. It really wasn't very good at all. And actually not through lack of effort, not through endeavour, just 2 teams that completely and utterly cancelled one another out.
Yeah. It's, we talk a fair bit, I've said it already in this episode, about like, you could bring other strikers into this Rovers team and like how much of a difference would it make? Like Dapple Mabudi, no thank you.
Oh my
like,
God.
That was one thing. It was like, It almost kind of passed me by. I'd sort of forgotten that he'd joined them. And then I saw the starting lineup and I was like,
oh yeah,
this team was supposed to be good. Why is he playing it? Like, how are you doing that? That can't be. And he was very much what I expected from Dapple Mabudi, which is like, he runs around a fair bit. And like, good on him. Like, good, but very little kind of quality on show.
Like, the worst thing you've done, actually, Duncan, in the last 24 hours was point out the fact that Arbroath had put highlights up. So Les knows exactly where I'm going with this, because the 2 of us went, oh, okay, we'll go and have a watch of them as well. So any Rovers fans listening, if you think our highlights show how bad the game was, try watching theirs and listening to the commentators.
It's a different 6 minutes. They've managed to find an alternative 6 minutes of highlights. They're not any better.
The female commentator actually calls Dapple Mabudi Mebudi. The whole way through, it's Mebudi. And what's it? Ryan Dow was
Ryan Doe.
Ryan Doe. I was like, I didn't think a game could get worse until I watched their highlights, and it genuinely did.
It's remarkable how different the 2 highlights packages are. But it is just because like nothing of any quality happened. So you're just rolling a dice and you're like, right, let's which of the 20 things that didn't happen are we going to include? And yeah, as you say, the commentary doesn't necessarily kind of enlighten beyond what you can see with your own eyes, really. What else have I got written down here?
I mean, coming at this point, so
yeah,
I agree. Metaphor came to my head. So continuing the GoldenEye James Bond metaphor. I don't know if you guys ever played multiplayer GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64.
All the time.
Brilliant. So you've guns and weapons and things like that, and you're running around trying to shoot people. And sometimes you'd run out of ammo, and there was always this fallback. You could sprint around and just try and karate chop people.
Yeah.
And you run around, and then you might get lucky, and you might hit people. And if you were playing the right, if it was in the right setting, you might occasionally kill somebody by karate chopping him. I mean, that's what it felt like watching us yesterday. There was nothing edible defensively around midfield, but there's just no cutting edge. You're like, running around trying to find, I don't know, the footballing equivalent of a club or something like that, or a Dostovo pistol, which I don't know, would that be like Stuparevic from Motherwell or somebody that happens to be available? Somebody just going to give you anything so that you're not just running around trying to make something happen by virtue of somebody sprinting the ball into the net or something like that. Oh, it was brutal.
Yeah, I mean, what we've not talked about is kind of probably the best chance, actually, which is right towards the end. It's Paul McMullen running through a lovely little turn. Just a little bit of quality on the ball, actually, which I see there wasn't
Really
an awful lot of evidence from either side. Kind of skips away. At the time, I didn't have a kind of great angle on it. I thought he could have kind of gone through himself. In hindsight, I don't think he can. Like, he needs to then play in his winger, but his winger at that point is J. Rowe, who, again, I think no surprise that he's not necessarily, brimming with confidence and kind of acting on instinct. So he decides to take a touch, and in a recurring theme, by the time he gets a shot away, there's someone on the scene to block it. Let's stick with you. Is this a has to take it first time, or on that surface, taking the touch not a bad option and just unfortunate it doesn't come off?
If he takes that first time and scores, it's goal of the season. And it's kind of Pushkas, it's Parma 98-99 territory. If he hits that first time and it curves in and over and scores, then I think that would have been probably goal of the season. Given that he is not brimming with confidence.
To be fair,
it is. Yeah. I mean, we're actually at the point where the goal of the month competition is going to be.
It's been running for 3 months.
Darragh O'Connor is going to get it by default. Yeah, I mean, seriously, we're at that point where Darragh O'Connor is probably going to get goal of the month by default. I can see why he's taken a touch. To be fair to him, he did try to shoot. It was blocked. It came back to him, and he then beamed it past Scott Brown, which, yeah, still a Sunday afternoon up. I think I was pretty angry at both of those players. I think, in fairness, it's a bit harsh on Scott Brown. Having seen it back, he's trying to run in, he just overruns, and somebody has trebucheted a pass at his feet. No, just kind of sum up where we are. But no, just add to what you guys were saying about McMullen. I mean, okay, he's not banging goals in, but we've seen more from him. And whether the change of manager, whether we saw a little bit at the end against Airdrie, and granted that the game had gone by then. We saw him trying. He's running through the middle. He's trying to drive the ball forward. He's not a striker. He's not a centre forward. We saw a bit more from McMullen. It found Rowe. I was getting ready, if that went in, just to type vindicated in capital letters, having proposed him as a centre forward. No, I don't blame him for taking a touch. He's a right back. And the fact that we're then picking hairs at right backs and centre midfielders for not getting shots away, it's deflecting responsibility to an extent away from those who should be in the positions to take that. But no, I mean, he got there, he got forward, he tried. Another one was up with Ross County. He tried to get into the box, he tried to make something happen. Deserves credit for that. But no, the whole move just summed up the whole where we are as an attacking unit at the moment.
Yeah, not to pile on to one of Welsh football's finest prospects, but see, as that move develops, Josh Gentles is barely interested. Like that, so the shot that J. Rowe has, actually, the defender kind of blocks it with his trailing leg. He's not far kind of diving past it. Obviously, still deserves full credit for blocking it. It's not a million miles away. But how often do you see a chance like that? Like dragged wide, kind of dragged across the goal? And if you can be sliding into the back post, you can really make that. Josh Gentles is on the edge of the box. As Paul McMullen is sprinting through the middle, and J. Rowe is sprinting down the right-hand side, you can see him in the background, and he's just kind of lolloping towards the box. And as he gets to the edge of the box, he slows down. Again, as I say, listen, there's such a small body of evidence for whether he's any use or not. But I don't know. I don't think he's not helping himself. Put it that way.
There's a juxtaposition with Niso for me, and it's the same thing. Like for a long time, Rangers loanees have been absolutely hammered by Rovers fans whenever we've brought them in, and I sometimes think it's justified, and I sometimes think it's a wee bit part and parcel of the fact that they came from Rangers, and if they were from any other club, they'd probably get a little bit more time. But to kind of not excuse him slightly, but it must be quite tricky going from being the best guy in one of the best teams at the age group that he's playing in to suddenly being the worst striker in a really poor team with no strikers. So, I get that there is an absolute kind of shift there, and I talked about it when Niso against Queen's Park, that there was just too much of a need to sort of recycle possession and go back round again, and you're like, you're not playing for Rangers 21s anymore, pal. Like, we need the ball in the box here. Like, we need goals here. This isn't a training exercise. If we get beat 5-0, nobody goes, that was a really good learning exercise, gentlemen. We'll go again next week. That pressure that they don't get at that age group, and quite rightly they shouldn't, that's on now. And I feel like Niso has, I mean, it is early, but it feels like he's certainly stepped up to it. He seems to be thriving on the physicality of it, and he's kind of driving the team forward, and he's really taken on that kind of role. And Gentles, for me, in the few opportunities that he's had, and it maybe is really harsh, but he doesn't strike me as a player who's really hungry. It doesn't strike me as a player who's coming in here going, by the way, this is my chance. This is my opportunity here to show what I'm about, and I can really kind of turn things around for myself. It kind of feels like he's going through the motions a little bit, which is frustrating to watch. Really frustrating to watch.
I think it's a good point you make around.
What makes it more frustrating is Gentles, actually, he's coming in with half a season under his belt at Alloa. So it's not as if Nice was effectively not played any senior football. I think he's had a game for Rangers or something like that. He's come in. Gentles is coming in, having half a season playing against, playing alongside war horses like Scott Taggart, Kevin Colley, and these guys. He's been playing against guys that are probably of a combined age of about 2,000 years old. And you would think that would, and it was Jim McInally had said that a long time ago. You learn by playing with men, not against them. And you would hope that having had that experience under his belt, Gentles would be able to kick on. He's just not. Yet.
Yeah, so I think the thing for me with this, to the point you were making, Blair, about the guys that come through at Rangers, and presumably at Celtic as well, for whatever reason we just don't seem to see them anywhere in the same kind of numbers, particularly the strikers. I think that the biggest adjustment is not getting 15 chances a game.
Yeah.
Like, you're not playing with 75% possession. The ball's not coming to you multiple times a game. Like, look at this Rovers side. You get the ball in the box once, that's a good day. And so it needs to be more, and probably more to the point, you kind of have to do more as well. And for all we've been complaining about Jack Hamilton, I think you saw the absence of him when he went off. And actually, Josh Gentles, he won a couple of headers. Arguably, actually, possibly won more headers than Jack Hamilton did in his time in the park. But they weren't going anywhere. Or there was no prospect of them kind of being a platform for anything else. And it's such a big ask. And he's very, very young. Half a season at Alloa is, as you say, more than Paul Niso's had. But it's not a long time to really go and learn anything. And it's, as I say, it's a big, big ask, because it's not just a case of saying, right, you're in senior football now, you're going to get a couple of games off the bench, once we're a couple of goals up, see what you can do, and if you do well, you might get a start. It's like, oh no, we need you to score here because nobody else is doing it. It's a huge amount of pressure. But, yeah, just, we are selfish. I couldn't care less how he develops beyond the end of this season. What I could really do with is somebody scoring some goals for my football team just now. And it just doesn't look like it's going to be him, to be kind of brutally honest, based on the, as I say, admittedly small body of evidence we've had so far. Just on a kind of tangential point to that, in terms of options off the bench, and largely for want of a talking point, Blair, we are a couple of games in a row now failing to fill the bench, and we're seeing, chances at the end there where it's J. Rowe, right back, who's kind of getting that chance. Is there a case to be made, in hindsight, that sending Lewis Gibson out on loan was a little bit short-sighted?
Yeah, maybe, but hindsight's 2020. Do you know what I mean? At the time, was it the right decision? Yeah. And actually, if we get 2 or 3 bodies back in the next couple of weeks, is it still the right decision? Probably, actually. As much as I think he would offer us something with Chin being injured, with Vaughan being as far away as he seems to be, Matthews having dropped out, but he's playing football. Like he seems to be getting games. He's getting minutes. He's been chipping in with assists and stuff. If the time comes in January where you go, actually, we now need him back. I feel like he's not been sat on the bench watching the football for the last 6, 7, 8 weeks. And yeah, we might have to do without him for a month to get there, but it might actually be the best thing for Lewis Gibson, the player, as opposed to us. Because there is that thing, like Kai Montague coming in yesterday. I mean, Josh Gentles is at least going away and playing with the 19s for Wales. He's playing football. Do you know what I mean? Like, Kai Montague's not playing a lot of football. He's coming in and he's been asked to do these jobs cold. And his endeavour is good and his work ethic is good and he tries. And you can actually see there's a player in there who's got a good touch and stuff. But that must be a really difficult thing as well, to play no football at all. And then, right, we're 0-0 in the last 10 minutes of a game here, or we're 1-0 down with 10 minutes to go. I really need you to go on and change a game. Well, I've not kicked a ball in 6 weeks, Gaffer. Like, I don't know what you're expecting of me here. So, yeah, no, I get exactly why you're asking the question. I think it is a question that, in hindsight, probably needs to be asked. But I think if you could rewind and do it again, I probably still would.
Fair enough. Les, feel free to give me your thoughts on Lewis Gibson, but also just to kind of round us off, Paul Hanlon's post-match interview. We've spent a bit of time talking about interviews this season. Anything in there that you found particularly noteworthy?
Gibson briefly, yeah. I mean, it's one of those ones, you go back, at the time it was the right thing to do. At the time, with the squad that we had and the number of players that we had in similar positions on the park, on balance, it was probably the right thing to do. And I think in January, we're probably going to have to be a bit selfish and say, look, you're our player, we're in trouble here and you're needed. You're needed. You're just going to have to, even if that means you spend some time in the weeks, you are needed here to drag us out of trouble. But yeah, like Blair says, he's then coming in having had half a season of playing under his belt, which can only be beneficial to Lewis Gibson and then by extension us. Again, similarly, a couple of seasons back, Ethan Ross, we had him. And people were like, oh, why have you sent Ethan Ross out on loan to Falkirk? Like, okay, he's a great player, but one, he was on a big wage, which I don't think Gibson is. But then you've got Dylan Easton, Sam Stanton, and Lewis Vaughan all occupying the same area of the park. And that made sense for different reasons at that time, despite what Falkirk fans might try and tell us about poor decision making. But no, on Hanlon's interview, I was impressed. I mean, when you listen to him talk, I know there's a bit of recency bias creeping in when I say this, but you get the feeling that he's been thinking about these things for a while. It's not like you sometimes see players at the end of their career coming in, taking charge of a team, be like, obviously boys are buzzing, obviously went out there trying to win it, obviously did this. When you listen to him talk, he's saying things like, I've been watching Arbroath, I can see they try and win a lot of second balls in the middle, but they're also, good down the wings. You're listening to what he's saying, you're thinking, this is somebody that's actually been thinking about the teams he's playing against. And you almost wonder last season if he was playing games and he's kind of thinking in the back of his mind, right, I'm the manager here, how am I setting up against this team? Or based on that, if I'm the manager next time, how am I going to do things differently? So, no, I've been quietly impressed. I strongly suspect he will not become our permanent manager. I don't think it's going to be a Brian Graham type situation where it's like, Paul Hanlon doesn't want to be here. I think we'll have a situation where the board or whoever will say, look, we've had the opportunity to bring in an experienced manager. We need somebody with experience right now, but we really like what we've seen, particularly on the training ground. We've really liked what we've seen, and the door will be open again in future. So let's revisit this down the line. And you can see there's like a case where Hanlon will say, we're grateful for the experience, understand where you've come from, and he's still got a couple of years playing in him. So no, I was impressed. And as I say, it's just that the insight it's giving you into his thinking doesn't mean it's going to lead to results. But no, I was really impressed with what I've been hearing from him so far.
Blair, what about you? I mean, not just specifically that post-match, but generally in terms of Paul Hanlon, how he speaks and the way his interviews have gone so far.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything Les says. My favourite part of yesterday was when Glavin came out to warm up at one point, which we were all kind of, because we were down in that corner where he came round. And you go, that's a bit odd why he's sending the goalie out to warm up. I wonder if Ray's got a knock or whatever. And he goes round and he's warming up behind the goals. He has a quick chat with Josh Ray and then wanders back round. And then 2 or 3 minutes later, Josh Ray goes down with a wee tweak in his thigh and needs a wee bit of treatment, which gives Paul Hanlon just enough time to go over and have a conversation with John Potter. And I was really, actually, it was that moment, as soon as I saw him go down and the physio come on, I was like, oh, no, this is just what we need. And then, oh, no, wait. Yeah, I see what he's doing. Buying us just enough time to have that conversation. But it was actually, I must admit, I agree with everything Liz has said. The interviews it's a breath of fresh air. He speaks really well, comes across really well, seems quite a genuine, kind of honest kind of guy. But that moment was the moment I was like, he needs to be playing. We need somebody on the sideline that can do that job. Like, do you know what I mean? You're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul here a little to an extent. I think were he a bit part player, were he a player that was in and out of the team, were he even at the stature of like a Callum Fordyce almost, like a player that could come in and you would be more than happy, but if he dropped out, there's a decent replacement for him. You don't want Paul Hanlon out the side. I think for me, he's too important. And that delivery of message and that kind of continuity throughout a game, it kind of shows a little bit that he needs to focus on the play. And I would be quite happy and actually quite keen to see him join the coaching staff, though. If that opportunity came in, if a manager came in and perhaps had played with Paul Hanlon in the past at Hibs, do you know what I mean? And maybe has recently left Airdrie, that he could come in and bring him into the coaching staff and kind of and shepherd him in. I think that'd be a really good thing. Just on the just while you were talking as well, actually, about the Lewis Gibson. He's actually probably unlucky in the sense as well that he's probably the one player with a change of formation that will lose out again, because we've now gone to the situation where we're playing a back four. So Josh Mullen's now no longer a right wing back and is now a right midfielder. You've got J. Rowe, who evidently can't play at right back and therefore is a right midfielder. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like, and you've got Paul McMullen, whose best position is as a right midfielder. You're kind of stockpiling these right midfielders, and it's that thing of, do we try and convert him to be something that he's not? Do we try and play him somewhere else? I'm not entirely sure if he's even what we need in January. Like, I'm not sure how he fits in.
I think he's a guy who, for me, just over the last few games, I think he would have had loads of minutes. I think
it's true, actually.
I don't think he's going to have started basically any games. But think back to Lesser Hampden. Callum Smith comes on left wing. Lewis Gibson, if he's on the bench, is on there before him. Yesterday, J. Rowe comes on right wing. Lewis Gibson's going on there ahead of him. It's that.
Probably.
I think he's probably getting 20 minutes, half an hour ahead of various other people. And see, again, true. From his point of view, maybe that's not what he needs. Maybe he actually needs to be somewhere where he's going to play the same position and the same role all the time. But I just think, for me, I never actually really kind of gave my own thoughts on that. I think he's the kind of player that we're missing at the moment, in the sense of he's a guy who will score 8 goals a season. Mm-hmm. Like, and I know there's this kind of like, he's playing in League One, but like, that's not a huge gap. And it's also not like, it's not like he's playing Lowland League, but also we've not anybody who's doing it at all. And I just think he's the kind of guy who scores goals even when he doesn't look brilliant. He's actually kind of guy who takes shots on, to come back to the main kind of thesis point. Sometimes he takes the shots you don't want him to take, and you think, you had a pass on there. But not anybody who's doing that at the moment, really. So, and I think the thing is, you can tell the exact point that decision was made to loan him out, and it was the exact moment that Richard Chin overtook him in the pecking order. And it's just, as soon as you go, actually, you know what? Because as you say, you've got McMullen, you've got other options already. And then you go, right, the kind of guy who's sort of your most out and out kind of wingery, not an awful lot of experience. So the guy who's going to be almost like your first sub, you go, actually, nah, that's probably going to be Richard Chin. Right, well, you're barely going to play. So then it's as soon as Chin picks up the injury that then, kind of falls apart. But as I say, I do just every now and again, I feel like we're missing him. And I think like or certainly, I think he would have helped in some of these games recently where we've not had him. Right, unbelievably, we've just ticked over an hour mark on this, so I'm going to stop there because, frankly, this game deserves not a second more. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm staggered as I saw the clock there. It really just proves that we will talk about literally anything.
Actually, well done for getting this far, if you did.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I assume it's people who've fallen asleep, things like that. But yes, thank you for sticking with us. Attention turns to cup duty now. Alloa at home, by no means the kind of game I think we would have picked given our current form. But we'll be back midweek to talk all about that and what that game might have in store. So we will speak to you again then. Thanks again for listening. Goodbye.